Ever wonder what it takes to give a classic Honda a modern engine? In this series, we're taking the challenge of swapping a K-Series engine into an old school Honda to bring the legendary ride back to life with some serious power. We'll cover every step from pulling the engine that's currently in the car to making custom modifications and solving the tricky details that come with a car engine swap. Whether you're a seasoned car enthusiast or just curious about what it takes to K-swap a vintage Honda, then buckle up as I'll show you everything that's needed. Hello race fans, so this is my 1990s Honda Civic ice race car. The car has already been swapped. Currently it contains a B20B out of a CRV. As you can see, 2 years ago, this car didn't look too bad. However, this is the current state of the vehicle. As you can see, the car has taken some punishment over the last 2 years. The front end needs a lot of work, and I don't think there's a single undamaged body panel, especially at the rear where it was dented in the last year. Therefore, here's my plan. Fix the body, swap the B20B for a K20 Z3, put in a 5-speed LSD, and then wire everything in. New lights, new dash, everything. And hopefully by the end of it, we'll have a nicely functioning race car. Stage 1. Remove the B20B. My plan here is to remove everything. I'm going to start by removing some of the suspension and drivetrain. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with the series. The 1998 to 91 Civic has a very different front end from the next two generations of Civic that came after it, with the lower control arms being attached by traction bars, which can be very annoying. They bend easily, and my plan is hopefully to get a traction bar with new bars for the K-swap. I'm removing the brake calipers. The brakes are going to get an overhaul, a clean, sandblasted and paint, and then all new pads and discs. With it being a winter race car, I'm probably just going to run a half rad once I get the engine in there and see how much space that I have available. With all the coolant drained out of it, we're starting to take off the front subframe. You can see the traction bars right there. This car's probably going to get an all-new custom exhaust system as well. With the K-Series header coming out of the back of the car, close to the engine wall and the subframe, I do believe that some modification to the subframe is required. With the manual linkage disconnected from the gearbox, it's now time to take out the back engine mount, which was a real pain. I had to use 5 extensions, a pry bar, a breaker bar, everything I could think of to try and get in there and get that bolt loose. Off comes the hood just to make things easier, and the old rad is gone. Now comes the laborious task of disconnecting all the connectors on the engine harness and feeding it back through the wall. With this car getting an all new harness, probably from an EP3, there's not much I need to keep here. That being said, I'm not trying to cut anything or break anything, I'm just going to disconnect it and feed it through the firewall. So now is the time to take off the engine mounts. 17 and a 90mm socket is required. On the transmission side, you're going to disconnect 3 bolts, and on the belt side, you're going to disconnect 2 bolts. Once they're disconnected, a little bit of prying here and there to get the aftermarket mounts out, then we should be able to lift the car directly off the engine. And there she goes, engine's out, stage 1 complete. Stage 2 is going to be the continuation of removing the suspension. Suspension removal is easy. Once you've taken the 12 and 40mm socket to take off the caliper, secure it to the side so it doesn't hit you in the head. It's then a 14mm socket on the Y-fork and 17mm sockets on the ball joints. Once the ball joint nuts are removed, you can hit them with a hammer. Not the ball joints themselves, but the lower control arms. Pop them 3 and the control knuckle will come off. Finally, it's just a case of a 19mm socket on the subframe, drop the subframe, that'll bring the tie rod ends and the rack and pinion as well. Stage 3, remove everything else. Okay, once the engine and suspension are out, now it's onto the wiring. I disconnected the fuse box and now the arduous task of basically disconnecting everything else. I'm disconnecting the evap system, I don't need that for the K-Series. Coolant hoses, I'm going to keep them, I might need them. I accidentally bent one of the coolant hoses coming through the firewall. Got to try and figure out how I'm going to fix that later. And now I've got to feed all this through the firewall. My plan is to use a EP3 donor car and transplant all the wiring from that into the 1990 Honda Civic. I'm disconnecting the brake proportioner here as this needs to be moved, as the gap between the cylinder head and the upright does not have enough space for the proportioner. I have to think how I'm going to relocate this. Windshield comes out nice and easy, it is a race car after all. The doors and the hood hinges next. Now got to take everything out of the interior. So the dash, the cluster, they're all going to come out as well. I'm going to save them, see if anybody wants them. As you can see, there's a little aluminium plate here with some gauges and switches. I'm going to make a new version of that, so it's going to come out as well. For ease, the steering column and the pedals both come out. All this wiring is just going to go too. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff left over from the original car, and a lot of it I don't need. I added a bit of light so I could see what I was doing. And that's the manual drive for the speedometer that came from the old transmission. Continue with the wires, disconnecting. I'm slowly feeding everything back through, especially around the area of the heat controls because I want to keep them. Plus there might be some stuff on this harness that I might need in the future, I haven't yet decided. Out comes the fire extinguisher, and the battery relocate comes out as well. Now I've got to take off the manual shifter, but guess what? I didn't take the shifter knob off from above. And there you go, day 1 complete. You can see some damage on the front end here. I've got to figure out how I'm going to fit the lights back into it. The propulsion valve's disconnected from the wall, ready to be moved. There's the damage to the coolant hoses. As you can see, the car is extremely dirty. I think the next step is going to be getting it cleaned. Everything's out from inside, apart from the 3 inches of dirt. There's a nice big hole in the back there, I need to repair that. But once everything's out, there's not much to it. There you go, everything completely out. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel. Come back for the next part where we'll be going through the car and cleaning everything out. Thanks for watching.